Before I do that, I want to put the rear shoe on, which has the parking brake assembly on it. These retainer springs, also you'll notice they're the same color too. They're interchangeable. Occasionally, because of the amount of stuff that is also held on with these, sometimes you'll find one that's slightly longer or shorter. You have to pay attention to that when you take it apart. So I'll take a spring, one of those spring cups, one retainer, and one of the retainer things. A little dab on there because that rubs on the backing plate. I'll push this through the hole from the back. I'll get the tool ready. I can actually take this shoe up into place, engage the push rod with the brake shoe, put that in place, and that retaining pin will come through this hole. Next on will be the spring cup, followed by the spring, and the retainer. Part of my problem is now my hands are not as coordinated as they used to be, so I find it a little awkward doing some stuff like this now. And it's a case of pushing that on, lining up the pin and getting it in place. Quarter of a turn and release. Why couldn't I do that the first shot? Don't answer that. Okay, now I'm going to get ready to put the front shoe on, which is normally known as the primary shoe. So it's going to be a little bit of fun because I have also to put in this bracket here, which goes in above, engages the parking brake bracket over here, and then also engages down here in this slot. Okay, my quarter turn, and that's in place. Except I pulled it too far back and kicked out that bracket. Next thing I'm going to want in there is the star wheel, which you want to make sure you put it the right way, because if you don't, the lever for the star wheel won't engage it. So whatever side this is on, and this one you can obviously tell, left side, you have to have the star on that same side, because if you had it this way, first it won't line up. In some cases this is in the middle, but what would happen is as that threads out, this would move farther away from the star wheel, like that. So you always want to make sure you put it in the right direction. You can see that's just sitting in place. Next I'm going to mount this bracket and this spring. This spring will go, this spring will go into this hole here, like that. I'll just rotate around so it sticks. That bracket just hooks into the hole on the opposite side. And again, using the pulling pliers, just hook it on there. And you can see how it pulls, and I can engage that just like that. Now you notice this is down too far. That's because the cable here is not on yet. View here. That just helps keep the springs from being on there. Before I put this spring on, I want to make sure I put the cable for the parking brake in place. So slide it on, and you can see because of where the crimp is, it's flat on one side and not on the other. So you want to make sure you get the flat side up against there. And it's also an item that I just put a small amount of the copper on. I think one of the reasons I also pay attention to detail is when I was racing, I never left anything to chance with my car. I have this sitting in place with this spring, and I'll take the tool, hook the spring, come up to this pin, hook the tool on the pin and pull, and you'll see the spring slide and snap into place. Now I want to make sure that this sits flush, and I want to make sure that this sits well as well. Now I'm going to put this other spring on. Same thing, just put it on with the tool. Pull, it slides right into place. I've seen people use screwdrivers, and it does work, but just having that extra little lip here, and the fact that this is slightly concaved, works a lot easier. Next is the parking brake, which I'll have to loop in through that groove, and you see where it lines up with that. Okay, I'm going to put this on, put the cable on. Next we'll be using the spring tool, grab the hook, my uncoordinated hands are failing me again. Okay, hook it, grab the shoe, Okay, after much arguing with hands that don't work, everything's back in place. I want to make sure everything lines up properly. I can see the star wheel is just out of place here a little bit. It's up in place, that's up in place. Everything is in place. The cable is looped properly. Everything's in place. Then just to make sure everything's seated, what I will do is just knock the shoes back and forth a few times. There we go. One changed wheel cylinder. One last item that I do sometimes is to get a head start on things. Some people think I'm crazy for doing it this way, but it works very well for me. I do what's called a gravity bleed. You can see this, the bleeder here. Take the little cap off of it. Get the wrench onto it. It would help if I put it on the bleeder and not on the line, wouldn't it? And I'll actually why can I not get coordinated here, people? Don't answer that. I already know. Just talking to myself. Get that on the bleeder. Just pull the bleeder loose. Just a little bit. A couple of turns. Now the gravity is going to fill out the wheel cylinder. And when it gets full, when it fills up, it'll start coming out the bleed screw. No brake pushing. Might take a couple of minutes, but quite often I'll do that. Just let it drip in there. I've got that open quite a ways to let as much air out as possible. You can see the fluid dripping out now. So you tighten the bleed screw up by hand. And even though I've got to come back and bleed it properly, I still always will tighten the bleed screw. You never know, you don't want to forget and come back and find out that you forgot to. And just snug. So there you have it, guys. There's taking the brakes off and cleaning them and putting on a wheel cylinder. And I think all of you out there know how to bleed brakes. Leave a comment. I appreciate you watching, and hope you're having a better one than I am. It's just one of those days that my hands just aren't working well. Have a good one.